With that, and this is the town hall, I'm going to open up for questions. We do have somebody here with a microphone, but I want to hear what you all have to say. So I want to try and answer your questions so you understand where I'm coming from and what I believe in.
If elected, and I hope you do be elected, will you live up to your oath of office to uphold and defend the Constitution of the United States and do whatever you think can to protect the unborn?
Absolutely. I can tell you that I believe when you take that oath of office, that's a oath that is sacred. And I also am, by the way, I'm endorsed by the Higher Right to Life, and I am pro-life.
Would you introduce a bill to protect life?
I would always be in favor of any legislation to protect life. Absolutely.
Would you be bold enough to initiate it?
What would have to do to initiate it?
Yes.
Well,
come up with a bill.
I believe we need to go down there. Look, life is important. Jobs are more important right now. Life's always going to be important as part of jobs. I think the first priority in Washington today is jobs and the economy and spending. And then I think we always want to keep we always want to look very closely. Hey, we have Mr. Boccieri here. This is great.
How are you? Mr. Renacci, good to see you.
Appreciate you being here.
Thanks for inviting me to your campaign stuff.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Likewise, likewise. You talk with Jim? Have you said your points?
I did. What we did was we opened it up for questions, but I'll let you.
Thank you. Thank you. Do you have a microphone or? How you doing? Roman, I've seen him on our campaign trail too. How's everybody doing tonight? I want to thank Mr. Renacci for inviting us to his campaign stop tonight and have the opportunity to have a heart-to-heart discussion about where our country's headed, where we've been, where we're headed, and the future of what the policies we've done and what we're trying to do in Washington makes sense for Ohio voters here. Now, I appreciate the candid discussion that we've had across the campaign trail and the sort of vitriol that we've explained and heard over the last several months of the campaign. But when it comes down to this, these are the facts. What our country faces the worst recession since the Great Depression. Now, I've talked to families.
Jim, I didn't come here to hear you.
Well, this is.
I don't even like you. You voted
We
for
do.
everything
This is
that
the
I
town
did.
hall, ma'am. Right? This is the town hall. Right? Mr. Renacci invited me here. Did you not, Jim?
I did invite you.
Jim Renacci invited us here. Thank you. Thank you. And I'm going to talk about my. Thank you. Well, what we were handed day one when we walked through the door in 2009 was a country in free fall. We were in economic chaos. We didn't know where we were going to land. We had exploding deficits. We had 2 undeclared, unfunded wars with borrowed money from China. We were faced with unprecedented, unregulated greed on Wall Street, a banking system in crisis that was left from policies where we've taken the referee off the field. There was no folks out there looking out for us on Wall Street. And while they made their millions and while they made their billions off of your investments, your pension funds, our country was left in terrible shape. We also saw the fact that we had a healthcare system in crisis. We had, unregulated greed on Wall Street that was siphoning off dollars. Folks were losing their homes. We need quick action. And we need folks to make sure that they understand that our country was headed for another depression. And if we didn't invest in our workers, if we didn't invest in Ohio's families, with the shrinking middle class, we'd be faced with unprecedented circumstances we find ourselves in now. Now, I stand here before you today to say that we need folks to run for office that are not running for government or against government, but want to run the government well. And while I want to talk about youth and the issues that make sense for Ohio families, putting folks back to work, enacting policies that are going to invest in our families, repaving roads and bridges and infrastructure, because if we don't do this now, we're going to find ourselves at a competitive disadvantage against our countries, or other countries that are emerging economies. India, China, Brazil, all these countries right now are emerging economies, and we've got to be able to compete with them. So the investment in our workforce is of vital importance. Mr. Renacci and I are going to have a spirited debate over the next 8 weeks. 8 weeks from today, you'll decide who you want to represent you in Congress. Do we want to go back to the same failed policies that got us into this mess? Before I walked in the door, 4 million jobs have been lost since the 2008 election. 4 million jobs lost. 22 consecutive months of economic downturn with job losses. The economy's starting to grow. We've had 8 consecutive months of private sector job increases, 13 consecutive months of manufacturing inputs and increases, and we're seeing our economy begin to grow. Is it fast enough? Absolutely not. I want to see this thing through and make sure that we continue to enact policies that are going to make sense for the American worker and American families. But I want you to know that we're going to have this spirited debate over the next eight weeks, and I look forward to this debate because I think we need to move forward. We need to move forward with policies that are going to help our economy grow and invest with our greatest asset, and that's the American people. So I want to thank Jim for inviting us to this, for his campaign stop. If this is one of the ways that we can get shoulder to shoulder and talk to all the voters in the district by showing up this, I'm sure he'll have the courage to come out and debate us when we have these debates in Canton, Medina, and in Wayne County. So I look forward to this debate, Mr. Renacci, and look forward to a spirited discussion tonight.
Appreciate you being here. I got my call.
Okay. So Jim and Ian, our two campaign managers, these guys are.
You guys just want to take questions and then just.
Yeah, we're at a stage now where we're just taking questions.
Sure. Is Roman going to be our moderator? You're going to call on the people?
Absolutely.
All right.
Yeah, unfortunately, I only have one mic, so I'll work my way back, folks.
Speaking of deficits and getting jobs, because that is something that's very important to Ohio. My question is, at what cost are we doing it? Because the deficits we were in, no, definitely, like you said, you walk into office with an extreme amount of deficit, but to spend all the money that we have, we're much worse off. My question is, how can we get ourselves out of it and our children and our children's children out of it? At what cost are we trying to create jobs?
You know, I guess I'll start first by saying it's a great question because, look, the Republicans started the problem, and I tell people this in my campaign stops that we're on a train on tracks that only can hold 35 miles an hour. The Republicans took the speed up to about 50. But John and Barack Obama and Nancy Pelosi got this train going about 85 miles an hour down a track that can't hold it. As a business owner, one of the reasons I'm running, because as a business owner, I understand that you cannot spend yourself in prosperity. Big government does not create jobs. Businesses create jobs. Businesses need government to step aside. What you'll hear from John is that, you know, he stepped into a problem. Well, we've lost 400,000 jobs in Ohio since he stepped in too. But he wants to go back and talk about the past. Let's talk about the last 2 years, and let's talk about where we're going. Certainty and predictability. We need that to create jobs. You cannot create jobs if you're spending the kind of money that John and Nancy Pelosi and Barack Obama are spending. We cannot create jobs. In fact, what we're going to do is we're going to scare business. I'm a small business owner right now. There is no way that I'm going to hire a soul today. And I guarantee you, any small business owners in this audience now, you're not going to hire anybody because you don't know what your health care costs are. You don't know what your costs are going to be in utilities. You don't know if cap and trade passes. Now, hopefully it's dead. Of course, Mr. Boccieri voted for it. And you don't know what you're going to cost are going to be in health care. I've talked to business owners that their premiums have gone up on the low end, 23%, on the high end, 63%. 63%. How does a company like that afford to create a job? Can't do it.
Well, can I jump in, Mr. Macy? First, I applaud you. You know, you've made a great deal of money off of some government programs, so Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security nursing homes. Am I wrong?
No, one thing you got to understand. No, I will answer that question. It's kind of interesting because nursing homes. It's always great when somebody says that. If anybody understands the nursing home business, I know we have a nursing home administrator here. The Medicaid resident, which he's talking about, is the lowest paid resident in the nursing home industry. The lowest paid.
Okay, cash for clunkers. My point is that this is a partnership. This is a partnership. We're in this together. Americans are in this together. And we need government and business working together to create jobs, invest in our workforce. Now, here are the facts, and I want to address your question specifically. Your question was about the amount of debt. Let's look back at the historical circumstances that have been left over the last several presidents. When Ronald Reagan left office, there was a $1.3 trillion deficit left to the country. When George H.W. Bush left office, there was a $3.4 trillion deficit left for the American people. When Bill Clinton left office, there was a projected $5.6 trillion surplus left to the country. In fact, it was in the budget, which we vote every year, there was a $380 billion surplus projected. When I walked through the door, we had a $1.3 trillion deficit that was left for all those things that I talked about in my opening statements. So we have an opportunity here to invest in our workforce. Where would our country be without unemployment extensions? Where would our families be if we weren't able to provide them with an insurance program to invest in them and keep them from going off a cliff? Where would our country be if we didn't keep teachers and fires and police and firemen and women on the streets? Where would our country be? Those are investments that I think are worth their weight in terms of the investment into the community. So we can talk about the fact about this partnership that we have between businesses, but the fact of the matter is that this is about our nation and investing in our workforce. I don't want to invest in corporations that are going to move their jobs overseas. That's a fundamental difference between the two candidates here. My opponent supports those tax breaks that have shipped thousands and millions of Ohio jobs overseas. I don't want to look one more factory worker in the face and tell them that the American government is aiding and abetting this exodus of jobs. Now, I didn't think that this was, my friends, I didn't think that this was possible. But we sent to the president a bill that closes those tax loopholes and give big corporations a pat on the back and your tax dollars to take their jobs overseas. But we did it. And we did it. And we need to make sure that we continue to invest in our workforce. You, the people of our country, are the greatest asset. Retraining workers, helping our families survive through this great recession so our economy can grow again. These are the things that matter to people. These are the things that matter to voters. Not corporations, big tax credits for corporations. There's a fundamental difference between where Mr. Renacci and I stand.